In the bitter winter of 1929, Soviet archaeologist Mikhail Griaznov shovel-struck something harder than the frozen earth of the Altai Mountains in southern Siberia. And what emerged from that ancient kurgan burial mound would revolutionize our understanding of one of history's most enigmatic civilizations, the Scythians, whose golden treasures and preserved remains held secrets that would fundamentally alter how we perceive the nomadic peoples of the ancient world. The discovery of the Pazyryk burial sites, with their remarkably preserved textiles, tattooed skin, and intricate goldwork, opened a window into a sophisticated culture that once dominated the vast steppes from the Black Sea to the borders of China, a people whose very name struck fear into the hearts of Persian emperors and Greek colonists alike, yet whose true story remained buried beneath centuries of ice and scholarly neglect, until modern archaeology began to reveal the extraordinary complexity of their society. The Scythians, known to the ancient Greeks as Skythai and to themselves by names lost to history, emerged from the shadowy prehistoric depths of the Eurasian steppes, sometime around the 8th century BCE, though their origins stretch back much further into the Bronze Age cultures of the Andronovo and Srubnaya peoples, who first domesticated the horse and learned to work iron on the windswept grasslands that stretched endlessly beyond the horizon. These early proto-Scythian groups developed in a landscape that shaped every aspect of their existence, a realm where the grass grew tall enough to hide a mounted warrior, and where the seasonal migrations of vast herds of animals dictated the rhythm of human life, creating a culture uniquely adapted to mobility, warfare, and the exploitation of an environment that sedentary peoples found harsh and uninhabitable. The archaeological record reveals that by the 7th century BCE, these nomadic groups had coalesced into a confederation of tribes sharing common material culture, burial practices, and what the Greeks would later describe as the Scythian way of life, a complex social system built around horse-mounted pastoralism, skilled metallurgy, and a warrior ethos that valued martial prowess above almost all other virtues. The earliest historical references to the Scythians appear in Assyrian records, from the reign of Sargon II, who encountered these formidable horsemen in the mountains of Armenia around 714 BCE, describing them as a people who fought from horseback, with powerful composite bows and whose very appearance on the battlefield could turn the tide of war. These Assyrian accounts, fragmentary though they are, provide our first glimpse of a people who had already mastered the art of mounted warfare, to a degree unknown in the ancient Near East, using their superior mobility to strike quickly and vanish before their enemies could mount an effective response, a tactical approach that would make them the dominant military force across the steppes for centuries to come. The rise of Scythian power coincided with a period of great upheaval across the ancient world, as the established Bronze Age civilizations gave way to new iron-using cultures. And it was in this context of change and opportunity that the Scythians first burst into the consciousness of the literate civilizations of the South, appearing in the historical record not as primitive barbarians but as sophisticated warriors, whose military innovations would influence warfare throughout Eurasia. For generations, the geographic heartland of Scythian civilization lay in the Pontic steppes north of the Black Sea, a vast grassland region encompassing modern-day Ukraine, southern Russia, and parts of Kazakhstan, where the rich black earth supported enormous herds of horses, cattle, and sheep, and where the great rivers flowing south into the Black Sea provided natural highways for trade and communication with the Greek colonies along the coast. This landscape, characterized by its seeming emptiness to outsiders, was in fact a complex mosaic of ecological zones that the Scythians exploited with remarkable efficiency, moving their herds seasonally between summer pastures in the north and winter refuges in the river valleys, following patterns of migration that had been refined over centuries of accumulated knowledge about weather, grass growth, and animal behavior. The Scythian economy was built not merely on herding, but on a sophisticated understanding of the steppe environment, that allowed them to maintain vast numbers of animals, while simultaneously developing the surplus wealth necessary to support a warrior aristocracy and the skilled craftsmen who produced the magnificent artifacts that have made Scythian culture famous in museums around the world. Archaeological evidence from sites like Chernomlia, Salika, and Globa reveals that Scythian society was highly stratified, with a warrior elite who were buried with enormous wealth, while common herders were interred with simple grave goods, suggesting a social structure based on military achievement and hereditary status that concentrated power in the hands of those who could afford the horses, weapons, and armor necessary for success in steppe warfare. The royal burial mounds, or kurgans, that dot the landscape of southern Ukraine stand as monuments to this aristocratic culture, some reaching heights of over 20 meters, and containing burial chambers filled with gold ornaments, Greek imported, pottery, Persian carpets, and Chinese silk, testimony to the vast trade networks that Scythian merchants and warriors helped to maintain across the ancient world. The construction of these massive burial mounds required enormous expenditures of labor, with some estimates suggesting that the largest kurgans took thousands of workers, many months to complete, involving not only the excavation of deep burial chambers and the transportation of massive stone slabs, but also the sacrifice of horses, servants, and wives who were expected to accompany their lords into the afterlife. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, provides our most detailed ancient account of Scythian burial practices, describing how the body of a king would be embalmed and carried throughout the Scythian land for 40 days while subjects cut off pieces of their ears, shaved their heads, and inflicted wounds upon themselves in mourning, before finally being interred in a great pit along with one of his wives, his cupbearer, cook, groom, lackey, and messenger, as well as horses and golden vessels. The entire burial chamber then covered with an enormous mound that could be seen for miles across the steppe. Modern excavations have largely confirmed Herodotus' account, revealing burial chambers that contain not only the remains of the primary occupant, but also those of sacrificed retainers, and hundreds of horses, along with grave goods that represent some of the finest examples of ancient craftsmanship ever discovered, including the famous golden pectoral from Tofts to Mohyla, with its intricate scenes of Scythian daily life, and the golden comb from Salika depicting Scythian warriors in combat, artifacts that demonstrate both the wealth of Scythian society and the remarkable skill of the artisans who served it. The Scythian military system was revolutionary for its time, built around the concept of maximum mobility combined with devastating firepower, from composite bows that could penetrate armor at ranges that made traditional infantry formations obsolete. On the open steppe, while the Scythian cavalry's ability to appear suddenly, strike hard, and vanish again made them nearly invincible in their natural environment. Every Scythian male was expected to be a warrior and horseman from childhood, learning to ride almost before he could walk, and spending his youth mastering the complex skills of mounted archery, which required not only physical strength and dexterity, but also an intimate knowledge of horse behavior and the ability to coordinate perfectly with one's mount while moving at high speed across uneven terrain. The Scythian bow was a masterpiece of ancient military technology, constructed from layers of wood, sinew, and horn that gave it tremendous power while keeping it short enough to be used effectively from horseback, and archaeological evidence suggests that a skilled Scythian archer could accurately hit targets at ranges exceeding 300 meters, while riding at full gallop, making them the most formidable mounted archers in the ancient world. The arrows used by Scythian warriors were equally sophisticated, featuring bronze or iron points designed for maximum penetration, and often treated with various poisons derived from snake venom, plant alkaloids, or decomposing organic matter, making even minor wounds potentially fatal and adding a psychological dimension to Scythian warfare that terrorized their enemies. In addition to their bows, Scythian warriors carried a variety of close combat weapons, including the famous Achinaic sword, a short, double-edged weapon perfect for fighting from horseback, as well as battle axes, spears, and daggers, many of which were decorated with animal motifs that reflected the deep spiritual connection between Scythian warriors and the natural world from which they drew their power. The horses that made Scythian military dominance possible were not merely tools of war, but partners in a relationship that defined every aspect of Scythian culture, bred for speed, endurance, and intelligence through centuries of careful selection that produced animals capable of carrying an armored warrior across hundreds of miles of steppe, while still retaining the energy to fight effectively at journey's end. Archaeological evidence from frozen burial sites in Siberia has preserved actual Scythian horses along with their elaborate tack and decorations, revealing animals that stood between 13 and 14 hands high, smaller than modern war horses but perfectly adapted to life on the steppes, with the stamina to survive harsh winters and the agility to navigate difficult terrain while carrying their riders into battle. The relationship between a Scythian warrior and his horses was so fundamental to his identity that wealthy individuals were buried with dozens of their mounts, and the Greek sources describe how Scythians would drink the blood of their horses during times of hardship, tap their jugular veins for fresh blood without killing the animal, and even ferment mare's milk into an alcoholic beverage called kumis that played an important role in religious ceremonies and diplomatic negotiations. The mobility provided by their horses allowed the Scythians to develop an economic system based not only on pastoralism but also on their role as intermediaries in the vast trade networks that connected the civilizations of China, India, Persia, and Greece, carrying goods across thousands of miles of otherwise dangerous territory and taking tribute from caravans that sought safe passage through their domains. Scythian merchants and warriors served as the crucial link in what would later become known as the Silk Road, facilitating the exchange of not only material goods but also ideas, technologies, and artistic styles that enrich cultures from the Mediterranean to the Pacific, while their control of strategic passes and river crossings made them wealthy enough to commission the finest craftsmen and import luxury goods from the most distant corners of the known world. The archaeological record reveals that Scythian elites had access to Chinese silk, Indian gems, Persian carpets, Greek pottery, and amber from the Baltic, testament to their central role in ancient Eurasian commerce and their ability to project power across vast distances despite their nomadic lifestyle. This economic success was built on more than just military might, requiring sophisticated systems of communication, diplomacy, and trust that allowed Scythian leaders to maintain relationships with trading partners separated by thousands of miles and months of travel, creating a network of alliances and obligations that extended their influence far beyond the boundaries of the steppes themselves. The social structure of Scythian society reflected both their nomadic heritage and their growing wealth from trade and warfare, with a complex hierarchy that placed royal families at the apex, followed by the warrior aristocracy, common herders, and various specialized craftsmen, slaves, and dependent peoples who provided the goods and services necessary to maintain their sophisticated culture. Herodotus describes for main Scythian tribes the royal Scythians who controlled the Pontic steppes and considered themselves the noblest of all Scythians. The nomad Scythians who lived further to the east and maintained a more traditional pastoral lifestyle. The agricultural Scythians who had adopted farming along the river valleys, and the Scythian plowmen who lived along the northern shores of the Black Sea and served as intermediaries between the nomadic tribes and the Greek colonies. This social complexity was reflected in Scythian material culture, which showed remarkable diversity depending on region, social status, and contact with other civilizations, ranging from the relatively simple tools and weapons of common herders to the incredibly elaborate gold work and imported luxury goods found in royal burials. all unified by distinctive artistic styles and religious symbols that mark their bearers as participants in Scythian culture regardless of their specific tribal affiliation or economic status. The role of women in Scythian society appears to have been more prominent than in many contemporary civilizations, with archaeological evidence suggesting that some women held positions of significant authority and were buried with weapons and horse equipment that indicate their participation in warfare and leadership, possibly giving rise to the Greek legends of the Amazons who were often associated with the Scythian regions. Excavations at sites like Pokrovka and Filipovka have revealed numerous burials of women interred with arrowheads, spears, and horse gear, while their grave goods include not only traditional feminine items like jewelry and mirrors, but also the weapons and armor of warriors, suggesting a society in which gender roles were more fluid than in the sedentary civilizations to the south, and where individual merit and family connections could override conventional expectations about appropriate male and female activities. The Greek historian Hippocrates wrote extensively about the Soromata, a people related to the Scythians, claiming that their women rode horses, used bows, and threw javelins from horseback, and that no woman could marry until she had killed a man in battle. Accounts that may be exaggerated, but which reflect the reality that nomadic societies often required all members, regardless of gender, to be capable of defending themselves and their property in a harsh and dangerous environment. DNA analysis of remains from Scythian burial sites has confirmed that many of the individuals buried with weapons were indeed women. An isotope analysis of their bones suggests that they had spent their lives on horseback, consuming a diet typical of nomadic pastoralists and traveling great distances across the steppes, providing scientific confirmation for the ancient accounts of female warriors. Among the Scythian peoples, the artistic achievements of Scythian craftsmen represent one of the great treasures of ancient art, characterized by what scholars call the animal style, a distinctive approach to decoration that transformed the forms of steppe animals into flowing, dynamic compositions that adorned everything from small personal ornaments to large ceremonial vessels, creating a visual language that was immediately recognizable as Scythian while incorporating influences from Persian, Greek, and Central Asian artistic traditions. The animal style was not merely decorative but deeply symbolic, reflecting Scythian beliefs about the relationship between the human and natural worlds, with specific animals carrying particular meanings, the stag representing the connection between earth and sky, the eagle symbolizing divine power and protection, the wolf embodying the warrior spirit, and the griffin serving as a guardian of treasure and sacred places, all rendered in compositions that emphasize movement, energy, and the eternal struggle between predator and prey that define life on the steppes. The technical mastery displayed in Scythian gold work rivals anything produced by the greatest civilizations of antiquity, with craftsmen developing sophisticated techniques for granulation, filigree, and repousse work that allowed them to create incredibly detailed three-dimensional scenes in precious metals, often incorporating semi-precious stones, enamel inlays, and other decorative elements that enhance the visual impact of their creations while demonstrating their access to materials from across the known world. The famous Scythian gold pieces found in burial sites like Oba, Chertomliuk, and Salika include not only personal ornaments like torques, bracelets, and earrings, but also ceremonial weapons, horse trappings, and vessels that were clearly designed for ritual use, suggesting that Scythian religious practices involved elaborate ceremonies that required specially crafted objects to mediate between the human and divine realms. Many of these golden artifacts show clear evidence of having been created by Greek craftsmen working in the Black Sea colonies, who adapted their traditional techniques to Scythian tastes and symbolic systems, creating a unique hybrid art form that combined Greek technical sophistication with Scythian iconography and aesthetic preferences. demonstrating the complex cultural exchanges that took place along the frontiers between nomadic and sedentary peoples. The religious beliefs of the Scythians, as described by Herodotus and confirmed by archaeological evidence, centered on the worship of a pantheon of deities who governed different aspects of steppe life, with Tabidi, the goddess of the hearth, serving as the supreme deity, followed by Papayas and Api, who represented the sky god and earth goddess, Oitosiros, who ruled over war and the sun, Artempasa, who governed the moon and marriage, and Thagamasadas, who protected horses and herds, each requiring specific rituals and offerings that reinforced the social bonds holding Scythian society together. Archaeological evidence suggests that Scythian religious practices involved the use of hemp smoke for divination and ecstatic experiences, with excavations revealing small tent-like structures containing bronze cauldrons, heated stones, and charred hemp seeds, matching Herodotus' description of Scythian purification rituals in which mourners would construct vapor baths and inhale the smoke of burning hemp seeds until they howled with joy and excitement, practices that may have played a crucial role in shamanic traditions that connected Scythian leaders with the spirit world. The Scythians also practiced ritual human sacrifice on a scale that shocked even the Greeks, with archaeological evidence confirming that royal funerals involved not only the burial of wives, servants, and horses, but also the systematic killing of dozens of retainers, who were expected to serve their masters in the afterlife, a practice that reflected both the absolute power of Scythian rulers and their belief in a continued existence after death that mirrored the social hierarchies of the living world. The ritual landscape of Scythian territory was marked by sacred groves, springs, and burial grounds where offerings were made to ensure the favor of the gods, with particular attention paid to the spirits of ancestors, who were believed to continue watching over their descendants and influencing the success of their herds, the outcome of battles, and the fertility of their lands, creating a complex web of religious obligations that governed every aspect of Scythian life from birth to death. The archaeological record reveals that Scythian religious practices evolved over time, incorporating influences from Persian Zoroastrianism, Greek mystery cults, and Central Asian shamanism, while maintaining distinctive elements that marked them as uniquely Scythian, including the use of ritual vessels decorated with scenes of animal sacrifice, the construction of elaborate stone altars in sacred groves, and the practice of preserving the scalps of enemies as trophies that demonstrated both martial prowess and spiritual power. The first direct contact between the Scythians and the great powers of the ancient world came in the 6th century BCE, when Darius I of Persia launched a massive invasion of Scythian territory, and campaign that would demonstrate both the military effectiveness of Scythian tactics and the impossibility of conquering a nomadic people on their own terrain using conventional military strategies. Herodotus provides a detailed account of this invasion, describing how Darius assembled an enormous army of over 700,000 men and crossed the Danube on a bridge of boats, expecting to crush Scythian resistance through sheer force of numbers and the disciplined tactics that had made the Persian Empire the dominant power from India to Greece. The Scythian response to this invasion would become a textbook example of asymmetric warfare, as their leaders chose to avoid direct confrontation while systematically harassing Persian forces, destroying supplies, poisoning water sources, and leading Darius deeper and deeper into the steppe until his army was exhausted, demoralized, and desperate to escape from a landscape that seemed to offer nothing but endless grass, burning heat by day, bitter cold by night, and enemies who appeared suddenly from nowhere only to vanish again before they could be brought to battle. The Scythian strategy of strategic retreat and constant harassment forced Darius to abandon his invasion after months of futile pursuit, returning to Persia with his reputation damaged and his army decimated by disease, exposure, and the psychological toll of fighting an enemy who refused to stand and fight according to the accepted conventions of ancient warfare. The success of the Scythians against Darius became legendary throughout the ancient world, demonstrating that even the mightiest empire could be defeated by opponents who understood their own environment and were willing to sacrifice short-term territorial losses for long-term strategic advantage, a lesson that would be remembered and applied by other nomadic peoples, facing invasion by sedentary powers for centuries to come. The aftermath of the Persian invasion saw the Scythians emerge as the acknowledged masters of the Pontic steppes, with their military reputation enhanced and their confidence in their ability to defend their homeland confirmed, leading to a period of expansion and consolidation that would establish Scythian dominance across the entire northern Black Sea region for the next centuries. During this period of Scythian hegemony, the archaeological record shows evidence of increased settlement along the river valleys, with some Scythian groups adopting agriculture while maintaining their pastoral traditions and military organization, creating a hybrid economy that combined the mobility and military advantages of nomadism with the stability and surplus production that came from farming, allowing them to support larger populations and more complex social structures. The Greek colonies along the Black Sea coast found themselves in an increasingly complex relationship with their Scythian neighbors, sometimes serving as allies and trading partners, sometimes paying tribute for protection, and occasionally facing raids and sieges when diplomatic relations broke down, but generally benefiting from the Scythian presence that provided both markets for their goods and protection from other barbarian tribes. The city of Tanais, located at the mouth of the Don River, became a major center of Scythian-Greek interaction, where Greek merchants traded wine, olive oil, and manufactured goods for Scythian grain, hides, slaves, and the exotic products of the northern forests, while Scythian nobles acquired Greek pottery, jewelry, and luxury items that demonstrated their wealth and sophistication to their followers and rivals. Archaeological evidence from sites like Neapolis Scythica in the Crimea reveals the emergence of permanent Scythian settlements during this period, with stone fortifications, substantial buildings, and evidence of craft specialization that suggests some Scythian groups were experimenting with urban life while retaining their cultural identity and political organization, creating hybrid communities that combine nomadic traditions with the advantages of fixed settlements. The peak of Scythian power came during the 4th and 3rd centuries BCE, when their influence extended from the Carpathian Mountains in the west to the Volga River in the east, and from the Far Zone in the north to the shores of the Black Sea in the south, making them the dominant force across a territory larger than modern France and Germany combined, with the military strength to challenge even the expanding Roman Republic, and the wealth to commission some of the finest artwork ever produced in the ancient world. During this period, Scythian society reached new levels of complexity and sophistication, with archaeological evidence revealing the existence of specialized craftsmen, extensive trade networks, and political structures capable of coordinating military campaigns across vast distances and managing the complex logistics of moving large numbers of people and animals across the steppes according to seasonal patterns that had been refined over centuries of experience. The royal burial mounds constructed during this period represent the pinnacle of Scythian artistic achievement, containing not only enormous quantities of gold and other precious materials, but also evidence of cultural exchange with peoples as distant as China and India, suggesting that Scythian merchants and diplomats maintained contact with civilizations across the entire breadth of the Eurasian continent. The famous golden pectoral from Tofts to Mohyla, discovered in 1971 and dating to the 4th century BCE, represents perhaps the finest example of Scythian art ever found, depicting in exquisite detail scenes of daily life on the steppes, including men milking animals, crafting clothing, and caring for their herds, all surrounded by dynamic representations of wild animals in combat, creating a visual encyclopedia of Scythian culture that provides insights into their values, beliefs, and way of life that no written source could match. The technical mastery displayed in this and other pieces from the same period demonstrates that Scythian patrons had access to craftsmen of extraordinary skill. Whether these were Greeks working in the Black Sea colonies, Scythians who had learned techniques from foreign masters, or itinerant artisans who traveled from court to court across the ancient world, bringing with them the artistic traditions of multiple civilizations, and creating unique syntheses that reflected the cosmopolitan nature of Scythian culture at its height. The decline of Scythian power began in the 3rd century BCE as a result of pressure from multiple directions, with new nomadic groups pressing in from the east, Greek kingdoms expanding from the south, and internal conflicts weakening the unity that had made Scythian military dominance possible. While climate change may have disrupted the pastoral economy that formed the foundation of their wealth and power, the rise of the Sarmatians, a related nomadic people from the region east of the Volga, posed a particular challenge to Scythian supremacy, as these newcomers possessed many of the same military advantages that had made the Scythians successful, while benefiting from newer technologies and tactics that gave them an edge in the competition for control of the steppes. Archaeological evidence suggests that the Sarmatian expansion was not simply a military conquest, but a gradual process of migration and assimilation that saw Scythian and Sarmatian groups intermarrying, adopting each other's customs, and eventually creating new hybrid cultures that preserved elements of both traditions, while adapting to changing circumstances on the steppes. The Greek expansion under the successors of Alexander the Great also put pressure on Scythian territory, with the Bosporan kingdom in the Crimea and other Greek states along the Black Sea coast becoming more aggressive in their pursuit of territorial expansion and less willing to accept Scythian dominance over the surrounding regions, leading to a series of conflicts that drained Scythian resources and divided their attention between multiple enemies. At the same time, internal conflicts within Scythian society appear to have weakened their ability to respond effectively to external challenges, with archaeological evidence suggesting that the traditional unity of the royal Scythians began to break down as different tribal groups pursued their own interests, rather than cooperating against common enemies. While the increasing adoption of agriculture and settled life may have reduced their military effectiveness by making them more vulnerable to attack and less able to employ the mobility that had been their greatest strategic advantage, the final centuries of Scythian independence saw their territory gradually reduced to the Crimean Peninsula and adjacent areas of southern Ukraine, where they maintained a rump kingdom centered on the city of Neapolis, Scythia, that preserved many traditional elements of Scythian culture while adapting to the realities of life as a minor power surrounded by more aggressive neighbors. These late Scythian rulers, known to history through coins bearing their names and titles, attempted to maintain their independence through a combination of diplomacy, mercenary service, and alliance with various Greek cities, but found themselves increasingly caught between the expanding power of Rome to the west and the growing influence of Sarmatian tribes to the east, both of which viewed Scythian territory as a prize to be won, rather than a sovereign state to be respected. Archaeological evidence from late Scythian sites reveals a culture in transition, with traditional nomadic elements increasingly mixed with Greek and Roman influences. As Scythian elites adopted Hellenistic art styles, Roman military equipment, and Mediterranean architectural techniques while still maintaining their ancestral burial practices and religious beliefs, creating a unique synthesis that preserved their cultural identity while adapting to changing political and economic circumstances. The final blow to Scythian independence came in the 1st century BCE, when the expanding Roman Empire began to assert direct control over the Black Sea region, viewing the Scythians as barbarians whose primitive society had no place in the civilized world that Rome was creating. While the continued pressure from Sarmatian tribes made it impossible for the remaining Scythian communities to maintain their traditional way of life even in their reduced territory, the last Scythian king, Silurus, attempted to resist Roman expansion through alliance with other barbarian tribes and the recruitment of foreign mercenaries, but found himself facing enemies who possessed not only superior numbers and equipment, but also the organizational advantages that came from centuries of military experience and imperial administration, making it impossible for his relatively small and isolated kingdom to compete effectively with the great powers that were reshaping the ancient world. The conquest of the Scythian kingdom by Roman forces under the command of various generals during the 1st century BCE marked the end of Scythian political independence, though communities preserving Scythian cultural traditions continued to exist under Roman rule and later Byzantine control, gradually being absorbed into the broader population of the region, while contributing elements of their ancestral culture to the emerging medieval civilizations of Eastern Europe. The legacy of Scythian civilization extends far beyond their relatively brief period of political dominance, influencing the development of mounted warfare techniques that would be used by nomadic peoples for centuries to come, contributing to the artistic traditions of the steppes that can be traced through later cultures, all the way to the medieval period, and serving as one of the crucial links in the development of trade networks that connected Europe with Asia and helped to shape the economic development of the ancient world. Modern archaeological research continues to reveal new aspects of Scythian culture and society, with recent discoveries of frozen tombs in Siberia providing unprecedented insights into their daily life, spiritual beliefs, and artistic achievements, while DNA analysis is helping to clarify their ethnic origins and relationships with other ancient peoples, confirming that they were part of a broader cultural complex that extended across the Eurasian steppes and connected diverse groups of nomadic peoples who shared similar lifestyles and worldviews. The scientific study of Scythian remains has also provided valuable information about ancient diseases, dietary patterns, and environmental conditions, revealing that these nomadic peoples had sophisticated knowledge of medicine, animal husbandry, and environmental management that allowed them to thrive in one of the world's most challenging ecosystems while maintaining population levels and cultural complexity that rivaled those of contemporary agricultural civilizations. Perhaps most importantly, the Scythians represent one of history's most successful examples of a nomadic civilization that managed to create a distinctive culture combining military prowess, artistic achievement, and economic success without abandoning the mobile lifestyle that was the source of their strength, demonstrating that nomadism was not a primitive stage in human development, but an alternative strategy for organizing society that could produce results as impressive as those achieved by their sedentary neighbors. Their story reminds us that the ancient world was far more diverse and complex than traditional histories have suggested, with multiple pathways to civilization and different definitions of success and achievement that challenge our modern assumptions about progress, development, and the relationship between culture and environment. While their artistic legacy continues to inspire and amaze viewers with its dynamic beauty and sophisticated symbolism that captures the essence of life on the ancient steppes, the Scythians thus stand as a testament to the creativity and adaptability of human culture, showing how a people perfectly adapted to their environment could create a civilization that was both distinctively their own and connected to the broader currents of ancient world history, leaving behind treasures that continue to enrich our understanding of the past and inspire our appreciation for the diversity of human achievement across the vast canvas of time and space.